Hello everyone, my name is Reed and welcome to Storytime. Today we are going to be reading some malicious compliance stories, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay buddy, we're going to do exactly what you want. My friend and I were walking our dogs through a huge off-leash park in our town that's kind of wildernessy with crisscrossing streams and several bridges. We walked to the bridge that leads out of the park, then turned around and headed back in. Our dogs were running around playing with each other, and there was a man and woman coming towards us with 2 adult dogs and a puppy. The puppy was on leash, but the woman let him off as they approached us. The puppy loved our 2 dogs and wanted to play, so we stood still for a bit, as did the other 2 people, and then my friend and I started to walk away. The puppy stayed with our dogs, so we kept glancing over our shoulders to make sure we didn't get too far from his person. Clearly, we were the only ones concerned about that though, because the other 2 people just walked away in the opposite direction without a glance back or a call or anything. My friend and I stopped walking again to make sure not to increase the distance, but they never looked back. It's really wooded there, so it was tough to see them, but eventually we could see that they were standing on the bridge out of the park, so we turned back and walked towards them to bring their dog back. We could see they were standing about 1/4 of the way along the bridge talking to some other people. So my friend called out, "Hey, can you call your dog?" several times, but they ignored her. We ended up walking all the way to the bridge to get their dog back to them, where my friend told them to put it back on the leash so it wouldn't follow us, but they still ignored her and kept talking. We gave up and turned around and walked away again, and no surprise, the puppy followed us again. And we got too far away for comfort again, so turned back a second time and called to these people again to get their dog. This time the guy yelled at us, "Quit worrying about it and walk your dogs. We'll figure it out." I mean, it should have been clear to them at this point that their puppy was nowhere near them and following us, and that we doubled back twice to try to return it, but he told us off for trying to help, so we just said, "Okay buddy, you bet," and went back to our walk. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, we might have doubled our original walking pace, but still doing what we were told. Once we'd got out of sight, I guess the stellar pet owner started to worry a bit because the guy actually started to call the puppy, but that didn't work and we were still walking. Eventually we were far enough away and out of sight that the guy started walk/running in our direction, still calling the puppy, which was still playing with our dogs and totally ignoring him. And we were still power walking away, just not worrying about it, just like he told us. A couple of extra details. This guy was in no kind of shape, and the ground is covered in fresh snow, so super slippery and hard to run in. So now he's trying to run to catch up, still calling the puppy, and we can hear some pretty labored breathing. Unfortunately for him, my friend and I have now reached the steep uphill portion of the dog park, and we're not slowing down. Puppy's still having a blast with our dogs. Now, the guy is shouting various reasons that this is not his fault, like that it's not his dog, he's just trying to catch it for his friend, or that he didn't hear us before, to which we call back, "'Kay," and keep walking away, because we're unclear on how any of that would be relevant, given that he shouted at us to quit worrying and to walk our dogs. Now, he's almost caught up, but he's wheezing and panting and red in the face and trying to catch a super hyper puppy that's running full tilt around us and having no difficulty dodging him, and we're still walking. But eventually we decide we weren't enjoying having a wheezing, shouting, panting shadow, also some concern that he was about to have a heart attack, so I scooped up the puppy and handed it to him. To be fair to him, he was quite grateful at that point, which is fair since we were only doing exactly what he told us to. Man, I was really hoping that this story would end up with OP and their friend ending up with a new puppy, but I guess it worked out in the end. Colleague blamed me for not knowing her working schedule, so I made sure to tell her every time. I work a night shift behind a reception desk at a hotel with a restaurant, 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. Every morning at around 6:17 a.m., Jenny would come in and start preparing the continental breakfast for the guest. My duty would be to give her a list of all the guests she would be expecting. One evening, before storming out of the lobby rather upset, she quickly took a step back to tell me how disappointed she was that no one called her the previous night to tell her that the hotel was empty and that she'd have no reason to come into work in the morning. I tried explaining to her that I've only been here for 2 shifts and I had no idea that it's a regular procedure here, but also that the night shift starts at 11 p.m., which is quite late to be making calls to the staff. I also told her that the amount of people who are staying at the hotel are obviously known throughout the entire day before 11 p.m., which also includes late check-ins to happen after midnight. We both agreed that it's reasonable for the previous shift to announce the list to the restaurant staff, but upon asking my colleagues about it, they all said that it is indeed what all of them do. Since then, every time I come for my shift and the hotel is empty, I always make sure to ask my colleague if they have called the breakfast staff just to be sure. Fast forward to a few nights ago. I clock in and see that the hotel was empty the previous night, but there's more than 10 people who checked in at 9 a.m. today. I get a call on the stationary phone at 1 a.m. from, you guessed it, Jenny herself, asking if there's people for breakfast. I said, why of course, you would have been informed if they weren't, as we discussed. At that point on, all I heard was her husband arguing with her about how incompetent I was for not telling her that she should come to work as she normally would. The morning came and she walks into the lobby, furious, and as much as I dislike confrontation, I told her there's absolutely no reason for anyone to give her a call, that she should follow a regular schedule. Plus, I knew she was working in the restaurant the previous day, which should have given her more than enough opportunities to check for herself. She stormed off once again, mumbling something like, I'll make sure to let the restaurant manager know. Clocking in 3 days later, I noticed the hotel was once again empty the previous night, but full for the same day, so I picked up the phone and rang her up at 2 a.m., not only waking her up, but also her husband, to let her know that she should come to work in 4 hours. All she said was, I have my schedule, you know. Also, it's 2 a.m. To which I said, I'm simply doing what you asked me to. Good night. I don't understand this at all. The same person's complaining one way, and then when you do it the way they wanted to, then they complain about it that way as well. Oh man, people are just complete idiots. Make it more colorful? Sure thing. When I was in high school, I had this teacher I absolutely hated, and she absolutely hated me. Towards the end of the semester, she clearly ran out of things for us to do, so she gave the whole class this activity of painting mock stained glass window style things onto the classroom windows. My friends and I got given the gates of heaven. It was a Catholic school. We glued the black outline part onto the window like we were supposed to, then we painted it very neatly, all in white because, you know, the pearly gates. Pearly, as in pearl, as in white. Our teacher immediately accused us of being lazy and angrily insisted that we make it more colorful in response. I literally took every single color we had access to and just went to town until the whole thing looked like a horrible mess. Mostly a disgusting gray-brown kind of color because of all the colors mixing so horrendously. She got so angry she gave us detention over the holiday period so we would have to come back to fix it over the break. I told my mother the story though, and she thought the teacher got what she deserved, so she refused to let the school give me detention for the incident. As such, not only did I engage in some explicit malicious compliance, but I also totally got away with it and faced 0 consequences too. Good times. For a split second, I just thought you were going to paint the gates like a rainbow type color, but then it turned into this horrendous brown-gray color, which is totally fine too. My girlfriend can't come over till tomorrow? Tomorrow it is then. My mother hated my first girlfriend. I had actually been planning to become a Catholic priest and therefore to be celibate when I was in high school, so my mother saw my first girlfriend as having ruined my life's plan when we first got together. Now, naturally, my girlfriend and I wanted to spend as much time together as possible at that early stage of our relationship, but my mother did everything in her power to try to limit this. As such, one day I asked if it was alright for my girlfriend to come over to our house, but my mother said, "No, not today." I was not particularly happy about this, especially because it was so obvious she was just being vindictive and had no good reason as to why. So I pressed her about it, and eventually, after much discussion, she agreed that my girlfriend could come over tomorrow but not today. Again, this was vindictive because she knew that neither of us had as much free time the next day as we did on the day in question, so it would have meant way less time together for us. Nevertheless, I agreed to my mother's offer. So, right on the stroke of midnight, my girlfriend arrived at my house and I brought her inside. Immediately, my mother called me away into the kitchen and started getting very intensely angry that I hadn't done as I was told because she said that she couldn't come over until tomorrow. To which I replied while gesturing to the clock, "But mother, it is tomorrow." This is some serious life lessons for all of you folks that are going to be having kids one day, or already have them and they're coming to this stage in life. Be very, very careful what you say to them. I paid for it with my own money. My mother often told me that I can have XYZ thing if I paid for it with my own money. I got my first job over Christmas vacation and with my first check, bought bleach and hair dye. I ended up dyeing my hair bright pink at my friend's house, and when I went home, my mom was ticked. "Mom, who said you could dye your hair?" "Me. You told me I could do anything I wanted, as long as it was with my own money." She was seething angry but said nothing. I had pink hair for all of the Christmas break until it faded and I dyed it brown again. This happened years ago, but I still remember her face. It was priceless. Wow, we got another one. Be careful what you say to those children, y'all. Listen very closely to these stories and learn. The car has to be in the driveway by midnight. No problem. I grew up in a small community in a rural area. There was no transit and the majority of my friends were bused into our high school. Anytime I wanted to visit with friends, I would need to be either driven by my parents or when we turned 16, get a driver's license. At 16, I got my beginner's license and close to 17 was able to get my full license, which gave me the freedom that I craved and needed. My parents wanted to seem progressive, so they never told me I had a curfew, but always insisted the car to be in the driveway by midnight, and in essence, I was always home by midnight. One weekend, a friend of mine was having a party at his place, and I borrowed the car and went. I met this girl there, and we began talking and eventually found a quiet area and began making out. Unfortunately, the time came where I had to go in order to have the car back in time. I told her my parents' rule and she suggested she follow me in her car and I can park my parents' car in the driveway and she would give me a ride back to the party. Great plan! I had the car in the driveway at 11:55 p.m. and back at the party by 12:30, picking up where we left off. She dropped me off at home at 5 a.m. and I made my way to the bedroom. I got up near noon and my father was fuming. Dad, being a light sleeper, heard me come in late. The conversation went like this. "Mother, what time did you get home?" Me, 5. Dad, and what time were you supposed to have the car home? Midnight. So then why did you come home at 5 a.m.? You have always said the car had to be home at midnight. You never said I had to be home at midnight. A girl I met followed me home when I dropped off the car and she gave me a ride back to the party. She then gave me a ride home after. The car was home before midnight. I don't think the smirk on my face went over too well with my dad, but my mom thought it was funny. Shaking her head, she just said, "Well, he's got us there." And yet another loophole in what the parents say. This is a sign. Stay vigilant, people. Do not let those children fool you. Alright, that's all the stories we have for today. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe for more content that's coming out like this daily right here on this channel. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have an amazing day. Goodbye.